The boutique was a sanctuary of luxury, gleaming chandeliers, polished marble floors, and the scent of fine leather in the air. Classical music played softly, reinforcing the exclusivity of the space. It was the kind of place where high society shopped without glancing at price tags. Vanessa Cole stepped inside, her heels clicking with quiet confidence. She had just come from court, another victory under her belt. Her navy blue pantsuit fit her perfectly, exuding authority. Today wasn't about work, though. Today was about rewarding herself. She deserved something elegant, something timeless. As she browsed the designer handbags, she felt it, the shift in the air, the subtle weight of lingering stares. The store employees, all dressed impeccably in crisp uniforms, exchanged glances. Their smiles were thin, their postures stiff. Vanessa was no stranger to these microaggressions. She had spent her career walking into rooms where she wasn't expected to belong, where her very presence was questioned. But today she was here for a handbag, not a battle. She let her fingers trail over a sleek black clutch, its soft leather cool under her touch. It was exquisite, precisely what she wanted. Just as she was about to ask for assistance, a voice cut through the polished air. "Can I help you?" She turned to see a man approaching. His name tag read Philip, store manager. He was tall, sharply dressed, with an expression that oozed arrogance. His eyes swept over her, lingering a little too long. Vanessa recognized that look instantly. It was the look of someone deciding she didn't belong. Vanessa met Philip's gaze, her expression unreadable. She had faced tougher opponents in court than an overconfident store manager, but she could already tell where this was going. "Just browsing," she said, her tone polite but firm. Philip crossed his arms, his lips curling into a smirk. "Browsing, huh? For what exactly?" Vanessa arched an eyebrow. "For a handbag," she replied, gesturing to the display. "Why else would I be here?" Philip chuckled, the sound dripping with condescension. "Right, it's just that we've had incidents in the past." Her expression didn't change, but inside she felt the familiar flicker of irritation. "Incidents?" Philip nodded, his smirk deepening. "People coming in, wasting our time, causing trouble. I'm sure you understand." Ah, there it was, the coded language, the polite racism dressed up as store policy. Vanessa took a slow breath, keeping her composure. "So let me get this straight," she said. "You think I'm here to cause trouble?" Philip shrugged, as if he were being reasonable. "I didn't say that, but I do have to be cautious. We have certain standards to uphold." Vanessa tilted her head slightly. "And by certain, you mean racial, I assume?" Philip stiffened, his smirk faltering for half a second. "I didn't say that." "No, but you implied it," she said smoothly. "Now, are you going to help me, or are you going to keep embarrassing yourself?" Philip's smirk returned, but this time it was forced. "I think I'll call security instead." Vanessa exhaled slowly. So this was how he wanted to play it. Philip pulled out his phone, his fingers moving swiftly across the screen. Vanessa watched, unimpressed. She had seen men like him before, small-minded, power-hungry, and convinced of their own authority. "Security?" he said into the phone, his voice laced with false concern. "Yeah, I need someone at the front. We have a..." He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "A situation." Vanessa smirked. "A situation?" She didn't move, didn't flinch. She simply pulled out her own phone and began typing. Philip's eyes flicked to her, his smirk returning. "Texting your lawyer?" he sneered. Vanessa didn't look up. "Something like that." The boutique had fallen silent. Other customers had noticed the growing tension. A woman near the jewelry display whispered to her companion. A sales associate shifted uncomfortably, glancing between Vanessa and Philip. Within moments, two security guards arrived, both tall, both imposing, both immediately focused on Vanessa. Philip gestured toward her dramatically. "This woman has been loitering and causing a disturbance. I've asked her to leave, but she's refusing." Vanessa let out a short laugh. "Loitering?" One of the security guards, a burly man with a buzz cut, stepped forward. "Ma'am, we're going to have to ask you to leave." Vanessa slipped her phone into her bag. She didn't argue. She didn't protest. She simply smiled. "Oh, I'm not going anywhere." Philip's smirk widened. "Then we'll have to call the police." Vanessa's eyes gleamed with something unreadable. "By all means," she said, folding her arms. "Call them." Philip blinked, caught off guard. He had expected resistance, maybe even an argument. But Vanessa, she looked like she was enjoying this. Philip hesitated, his fingers hovering over his phone. He had expected Vanessa to back down, to argue, to leave in frustration, but her calm, unwavering confidence unsettled him. "Go on," she urged, her voice smooth. "Call the police." Philip's smirk faltered for just a second, but his pride wouldn't let him stop now. With an exaggerated sigh, he tapped the screen and pressed the call button. "Yeah, I need officers at the boutique," he said, glancing at Vanessa as if she were some kind of threat. "We have a woman refusing to leave after being asked multiple times. She's being uncooperative." Vanessa chuckled softly, shaking her head. Uncooperative? The narrative was shifting exactly as she expected. The security guards stood nearby, arms crossed, waiting. Other shoppers were now blatantly watching, their curiosity piqued. A few pulled out their phones, recording, snapping pictures. Vanessa, meanwhile, took a slow, deliberate step toward Philip. "You sure you want to do this?" she asked, her voice almost amused. Philip scoffed. "You brought this on yourself." Vanessa just nodded as if she had expected that answer. She turned her attention to the security guards. "And you two? You're just going to go along with this?" One of them cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. The other remained stone-faced. Philip, however, was reveling in the moment. He straightened his suit, smirking as he put his phone away. "The cops will be here soon. I'd suggest you..." The boutique's glass doors swung open. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside. Philip grinned triumphantly, pointing toward Vanessa. "There she is," he said. "That's the problem." But then something changed. The moment the officers laid eyes on Vanessa, their expressions shifted, from authority to something else entirely. Recognition. And suddenly, Philip's smirk began to fade. The boutique, once filled with quiet murmurs and luxury, fell completely silent. The 2 officers stood frozen in the doorway, their eyes locked onto Vanessa. One of them, Officer Reynolds, visibly stiffened. The other, Officer Carter, swallowed hard. Philip, oblivious to the shift in energy, folded his arms smugly. "Thank you for coming, officers," he said, his voice dripping with false professionalism. "This woman has been loitering, refusing to leave when asked. She's causing a disturbance, and I need her removed." Neither officer moved. Philip frowned. "Well, what are you waiting for?" Officer Reynolds cleared his throat. Sir," he said cautiously. "Are you sure about this?" Philip rolled his eyes. "Of course I'm sure. She's been difficult since she walked in. She refused to leave when security told her to." Vanessa, still perfectly composed, finally spoke. "Officers," she said, her voice cool and professional. "Do you need me to identify myself, or do you already know who I am?" Philip let out a laugh. "Oh, please. What are you, some kind of..." "Miss Cole," Officer Carter cut in, his tone shifting to something dangerously close to respect. "Is everything okay?" Philip's head snapped toward him. "Wait, what?" Officer Reynolds exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Miss Cole, as in Vanessa Cole?" Vanessa tilted her head, smiling slightly. "That's right." Philip's smirk disappeared. He glanced between the officers and Vanessa, a growing sense of unease creeping into his expression. Officer Carter turned to Philip, his demeanor hardening. "Sir, are you aware that Vanessa Cole is the district attorney?" Philip's face went pale. What? The weight of his mistake hit him all at once. And Vanessa? She just stood there, watching him unravel. The color drained from Philip's face. His lips parted slightly, as if trying to form a response, but no words came out. Vanessa remained exactly where she was, calm, composed, and entirely in control. "The district attorney?" Philip finally choked out, his confidence cracking. Officer Reynolds nodded stiffly. "Yes, sir, the district attorney." Philip took a shaky step back, his gaze flickered between Vanessa and the officers, desperate to find a way out. I didn't know," he stammered. Vanessa arched an eyebrow. "Didn't know what?" Philip's mouth opened, but she didn't give him a chance to answer. "That I was the district attorney," she continued smoothly, "or that your blatant discrimination would have consequences." A heavy silence fell over the boutique. The other customers, who had been quietly observing, now openly stared. Phones were recording. Officer Carter turned to Philip, his expression unreadable. "Sir, you just falsely reported a crime. That's a serious offense." Philip's hands shot up defensively. No, wait, I didn't." He turned to Vanessa, grasping for anything that could undo the damage. "Look, this is all just a misunderstanding." Vanessa let out a short, humorless laugh. "A misunderstanding?" She took a step closer, her gaze locking onto his. "So when you accused me of loitering, that was a mistake?" When you called security instead of assisting me, was that a mistake too? Philip swallowed hard. I didn't mean. Vanessa tilted her head. Oh, I think you meant exactly what you did. Philip was unraveling. He turned desperately to the officers. This isn't fair. How was I supposed to know who she was? Officer Reynolds exhaled sharply. That's the problem, sir. You shouldn't have needed to. Philip had no response. Vanessa, however, was far from finished. Philip stood there, his face pale, his arrogance now replaced by sheer panic. The weight of the situation was finally sinking in. He had humiliated a district attorney in front of witnesses, security cameras, and police officers. Vanessa took another slow step forward, her presence commanding the room. Tell me, Philip, she said smoothly. If I hadn't been the DA, if I had been just any other black woman walking into your store, what would have happened? Philip's mouth opened, then closed. He had no answer. Vanessa smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Would you have had me dragged out, arrested, charged with trespassing? Philip stammered. I know, that's not. You called security over nothing, Vanessa continued, her voice steady. Then you called the police and lied, all because you assumed I didn't belong here. Philip turned back to the officers, desperate. This is being blown out of proportion. Officer Carter folded his arms. Is it? He asked coolly. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you just tried to weaponize law enforcement against an innocent customer. Philip's breath quickened. He turned to the boutique's employees, searching for backup, but none of them would meet his eyes. Vanessa let the silence stretch. She wanted him to feel it. The humiliation, the power shift. I should have you arrested, she finally said, her voice almost casual. Philip's eyes went wide. No, please, I swear, I didn't mean. Vanessa raised a hand, silencing him. Relax, I won't press charges. Philip exhaled in relief, but Vanessa's gaze hardened. But I will be making some phone calls. Philip's relief vanished, and just like that, his world began to crumble. Philip stood frozen, his entire body tense. Phone calls, he echoed weakly. Vanessa nodded, pulling out her phone. That's right. Calls to my office, the media, and, she smirked, your corporate headquarters. Philip's breathing grew uneven. Look, I get it. I made a mistake, but there's no need to ruin my life over this. Vanessa's smile was razor sharp. Ruin your life? She let the words hang in the air. Tell me, Philip, were you worried about my life when you called the police? Were you concerned about what could have happened if the wrong officers showed up? Philip's lips parted, but no words came. I don't think you understand, Vanessa continued, her tone calm but lethal. This isn't just about me. It's about every person who's ever been treated like a criminal for simply existing in spaces people like you think they don't belong in. Philip swallowed hard. I didn't mean. Vanessa held up a finger. Let's not insult both our intelligence. She scrolled through her contacts and tapped a number. Philip's stomach dropped. Hi, yes, Vanessa said, her voice instantly professional. This is Vanessa Cole, District Attorney. I need to speak to someone from your corporate office about a civil rights violation that took place in your boutique just now. Philip's knees nearly buckled. The corporate office? A civil rights violation? The boutique staff exchanged nervous glances. Shoppers continued to record. The tension in the air was suffocating. Within minutes, Vanessa ended the call with a satisfied nod. They'll be in touch soon, she said, slipping her phone away. Philip looked like he might pass out. And Vanessa? She was just getting started. Philip stood there, beads of sweat forming at his temple. He had gone from arrogant store manager to a man on the verge of collapse in mere minutes. Vanessa, however, was unbothered. She turned back to the officers. Gentlemen, I assume there's no actual crime here? Officer Reynolds shook his head. No, ma'am, but there was a false report. He shot Philip a cold glare. Philip's mouth opened, but before he could speak, Vanessa cut in. That's what I thought. She adjusted her handbag and turned toward the door. I've handled this enough for now. The real fun starts when corporate gets involved. Just as she was about to leave, Philip's phone buzzed violently in his pocket. He fumbled to check the screen, and his face lost all color. Incoming call. Regional Director Vanessa caught the way his hands shook. You should answer that, she said, feigning concern. I imagine they're not too happy right now. Philip hesitated, but the phone wouldn't stop ringing. He swallowed hard and finally pressed accept. Hello? His voice cracked. The boutique was silent, but even without speakerphone, it was clear the person on the other end was furious. Philip's expression twisted with every second. His shoulders slumped. He nodded, muttering, "Yes, sir," over and over. Then came the final blow. "Wait, what?" His eyes widened in disbelief. "You're firing me?" Vanessa smirked. There it is. The other employees exchanged uneasy glances. Some looked relieved, others turned away as if pretending they weren't watching their boss's downfall in real time. Philip turned to Vanessa, pure desperation in his eyes. "Please," he whispered, covering the phone's mic. "You don't have to do this." Vanessa tilted her head. "Neither did you." And with that, she walked out, leaving Philip to face the storm alone. The boutique doors swung shut behind Vanessa, but the chaos inside was far from over. Philip stood frozen, still clutching his phone, his face a mask of shock and fear. The employees whispered amongst themselves, and some shoppers discreetly slipped out, eager to spread the news. But Vanessa? She was already steps ahead. As she walked down the street, she opened her social media app and tapped record. "Let me tell you all what just happened to me," she began, her tone steady but cutting. "I walked into a luxury boutique today to browse, like any other customer. But instead of being helped, I was profiled, humiliated, and accused of loitering. When I didn't immediately leave, the manager called the police on me." Her camera panned to the boutique behind her. "What he didn't realize," she continued, "is that I'm the district attorney, and I don't take discrimination lightly." She ended the video with a sharp, simple message. It's time we start holding people accountable. Within minutes, the post started gaining traction. Likes, comments, shares. By the time Vanessa reached her office, her phone was buzzing nonstop. A text from her assistant. "This is blowing up. Already at 500,000 views in 30 minutes. A message from a journalist. "Miss Cole, we'd love to cover your story. When can you comment?" A call from a major civil rights organization. "We'd love to discuss next steps with you." Vanessa leaned back in her chair, watching it all unfold. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about every person who had ever been mistreated, and now, the world was watching. Vanessa sipped her coffee as she refreshed her phone. The numbers were staggering. 1.2 million views. Over 300,000 shares. Thousands of furious comments. Her story had gone viral. Screenshots of her post flooded Twitter, Instagram, and news sites. People tagged the boutique's corporate account, demanding accountability. "This is disgusting. Fire that manager immediately." How many times does this have to happen before people learn? "I'm done shopping here. Who else is boycotting?" Corporate had no choice but to respond. A statement appeared on their official page. "We take these allegations very seriously. The manager in question has been terminated, and we are implementing immediate bias training across all locations. We deeply apologize to Ms. Cole and anyone affected by this incident." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. Predictable, but the damage was already done. People weren't satisfied with just an apology. The boutique's stock price dipped as investors panicked. Influencers and celebrities joined the outrage. A petition circulated, demanding further investigations into the company's practices. Then came the final blow. A whistleblower, claiming to be a former employee, posted receipts, emails from corporate discussing how to subtly discourage certain customers from lingering in high-end locations. The internet erupted. This wasn't just about Philip anymore. This was about a systemic problem. And Vanessa? She had just sparked a movement. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, watching the chaos unfold. The boutique's corporate office was in full crisis mode. News outlets ran the story nonstop. Luxury boutique faces backlash after racial profiling scandal. It wasn't just a social media controversy anymore. It was national news. Then another twist. Her assistant rushed in, breathless. "You need to see this." She handed Vanessa a tablet, and a video played. It was Philip. He had recorded a public apology, but it was clear he was doing it under pressure. His voice wavered as he read from a statement. "I deeply regret my actions and understand how they hurt Miss Cole and others. I never intended to discriminate, and I am committed to learning from this mistake." Vanessa scoffed. Too little, too late. But it wasn't Philip's apology that shocked her. It was the comments. "He's only sorry because he got caught. Funny how he suddenly understands now that he's jobless. He called the cops on an innocent woman. That's not just a mistake." People weren't buying it. And Philip? He had bigger problems. A news article surfaced. He had a history of profiling customers. Former employees and customers came forward, sharing their own stories of mistreatment under his management. Philip wasn't just a bad manager, he was a repeat offender. And now, his entire reputation was in ruins. Vanessa exhaled, setting the tablet down. This wasn't just justice, it was a reckoning. Philip had officially become public enemy number one. Social media users dug up old complaints about him from former employees and customers. People posted screenshots, shared their own horror stories, and painted a clear picture. This wasn't an isolated incident. Philip had been doing this for years. Then came the biggest blow yet. A civil rights attorney announced a class action lawsuit against the boutique, citing a pattern of racial discrimination. Vanessa wasn't involved in the lawsuit, but her story had given others the courage to come forward. Corporate panicked. Another statement was released, distancing themselves from Philip entirely. We do not condone discrimination in any form. The actions of the former store manager do not reflect our values. We are cooperating fully with all investigations. But the public wasn't buying it. You don't condone it, but you let it happen for years. You only care now because you got caught. We're done supporting your brand. Stores started seeing boycotts and the boutique's sales plummeted. And Philip, he couldn't escape the consequences. He was blacklisted from the industry. No high-end retailer would touch him. His LinkedIn was flooded with hate comments. Job rejections piled up. His entire career was over. Vanessa scrolled through the headlines, shaking her head. She didn't feel sorry for him. This wasn't about ruining a man's life. It was about making sure people like him never had the power to ruin someone else's. Vanessa's phone buzzed nonstop. Reporters, activists, even politicians wanted to talk. This wasn't just about one boutique anymore. It was about every space where people were made to feel like they didn't belong. Her assistant knocked, stepping in with a serious expression. "You have another request," she said, handing Vanessa a folder. Vanessa opened it and her brows lifted. A law firm wanted to collaborate on a major anti-discrimination initiative. They weren't just talking about one lawsuit, they wanted real policy change in the industry. Vanessa exhaled. This had gone far beyond her own experience, and she was ready for it. She turned on the news. A panel of analysts debated the case, discussing racial profiling, corporate responsibility, and the power of social media justice. One guest said, "This is a turning point. People are no longer staying silent, and companies are finally being held accountable." Vanessa leaned back, a small smile forming. This was bigger than Philip, bigger than one store. This was a movement. Her assistant cleared her throat. "So, do I tell them you're in?" Vanessa didn't hesitate. "Absolutely." Because this wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about changing the game forever. Vanessa stood before a packed conference room, cameras flashing, microphones waiting. She had been in courtrooms, in high-profile debates, but today felt different. Today, she wasn't just a district attorney. She was the face of a movement. She adjusted the mic and spoke with purpose. What happened to me happens to people every day. The only difference? I had a platform to fight back. But this fight isn't just mine, it's ours. The crowd erupted in applause. Vanessa had teamed up with civil rights leaders, policymakers, and legal experts. They weren't just holding one company accountable, they were pushing for sweeping industry-wide reforms, stronger anti-discrimination policies, mandatory racial bias training, legal consequences for false accusations. This wasn't just a viral moment, it was a permanent shift. As she walked off stage, her phone vibrated, a text from her mother. "Your father would be proud." Vanessa's eyes welled up, but she didn't let them fall, because this wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning, and from now on, no one would ever have to prove they belonged. Vanessa's story is just one example of how racial discrimination still exists in everyday life, but it also proves that we have the power to fight back. No one should be profiled, humiliated, or denied basic respect just because of who they are. Now it's your turn to take action. Speak up when you witness discrimination. Support businesses that value diversity and inclusion. Hold corporations accountable. Your voice and your dollars matter. Share this story so more people understand the reality of racial profiling. Change doesn't happen by staying silent. It happens when we demand it. Let's make sure no one ever has to prove they belong again.